The story begins on a wind-swept road winding through the tangled wilderness of the two rivers, in a land quietly cradled by time. From the mountains of mist, a chill wind rises, not the beginning of the tale, for there are no beginnings or endings to the wheel of time. But it is a beginning, as it sweeps across the hills, down into the westwood, and finds two men trudging along a narrow cart path. Rand al'Thor, a tall, broad-shouldered boy with reddish hair and gray eyes, walks beside his father Tam, guiding their mare Bella, who pulls a small cart laden with barrels of apple cider and brandy. It is spring, or it should be, yet the wind bites with the sharpness of late winter, tugging at Rand's cloak and whipping it around his legs. He fumbles with it, trying to wrap it tighter, but the bow in his hand and the quiver at his hip get in the way. An arrow is already nocked, just in case. Tam, unfazed by the wind, walks steadily on the other side of Bella. His brown cloak flaps like a banner, but he seems indifferent to the cold. The older man, with his broad face and grizzled hair, moves with calm purpose, using a spear as a walking staff, his heavy steps setting a rhythm against the groaning of the cart's axle. Rand glances toward his father. He's still there, Rand thinks, trying not to feel foolish. The day is unnaturally quiet. No birdsong, no rustling creatures, only the wind and the creak of their wheels. The land around them is bleak. The trees are bare, their limbs still winter-gripped. Dead weeds, clawed stones, and patches of snow remain in deep-shaded hollows. The sunlight, weak and pale, casts shadows that feel heavier than light. Rand finds himself touching the nocked arrow, fingers brushing the shaft the way Tam taught him, a motion of habit, readiness, and a little unease. Winter had been cruel this year. Wolves, bold and starving, had ventured into farms, attacking sheep, sometimes even breaking into barns. Some said bears had returned too. It was no longer safe to be out after dark, or even in daylight if you wandered too far. Rand tightens his grip on his bow. Tam, steady as ever, walks beside Bella, touching the mare's flank now and then to keep her moving. Rand sees him not just as a father, but as a pillar of the world, a man who could stand unmoved while a storm raged. Tam doesn't say anything, but his presence speaks volumes. Wolves or no wolves, weather or no weather, they have a task, and they're going to finish it. He's delivering the cider to Amon's field, just like every year. Rand feels a pang of guilt and turns his eyes back to the woods. I should be watching my side of the road, he reminds himself. His father trusts him to keep an eye out. Rand is taller than Tam, taller than anyone in their village, but beyond height and his broad shoulders, he shares little resemblance. His gray eyes and red-tinged hair came from his mother, Tam said, a woman Rand barely remembers, save for the smiling face in a few hazy memories, and the grave he visits each year on Beltane and Sunday. The cart behind them carries 2 small casks of brandy and 8 barrels of cider. Not much, but enough for the Wine Spring Inn's festival use. Tam always delivers his share. He had promised the mayor, Bran al'Vir, and Tam, al'Thor always keeps his word. Rand is glad for the journey. Anything to escape the farm, even if just for a day, and the thought of Beltane lifts his spirits, even if the air doesn't. But then it returns, that prickle on his skin, the hairs on his arms rising, the feeling of being watched. He tries to shake it off. Nothing moves in the trees. It's nothing, he tells himself. Still, the sensation doesn't fade. He adjusts his grip on the bow, rubbing his arm where the sensation itches. He feels a gaze. He finally turns his head, and there, just 20 spans behind them on the road, is a rider. A black figure, draped head to toe in a cloak darker than shadow, mounted on a black horse. The cloak doesn't flutter in the wind. It hangs perfectly still, despite the gusts that buffet Rand's own clothes. Rand freezes. He can't look away. The rider's face is hidden, but he can feel the stare boring into him. And worse, he can feel hatred. Pure, cold, ancient hatred, not vague or impersonal, but directed. Toward him. Rand's heart races. He stumbles backward, catches his heel on a stone, and falls against Bella's harness. The horse snorts and halts. Tam turns. Are you all right, lad? He asks, Frowning, Rand's breath catches. A rider, he says. A stranger, following us. Tam lifts his spear, scanning the road. Where? Rand points. There, down the. He stops mid-sentence. The road is empty. He blinks, looks again. The trees show no sign of movement. No horse. No rider. I don't understand, Rand says, stunned. He was there. A man in a black cloak, on a black horse. Tam looks carefully at the forest and the road. I wouldn't doubt your word, lad, he says, but where has he gone? I don't know. Rand retrieves his bow and knocks the arrow again, checking the fletching. His hand trembles slightly. Tam frowns. A horse leaves tracks even here. He moves toward the back of the cart to check. If we find hoof prints, we'll know for sure. Rand remains where he is, disturbed by memory. Not of the rider's gaze, but of the cloak, untouched by the wind. It wasn't just a stranger, he thinks. There was something wrong about him, but he doesn't say it aloud. As Tam searches, Rand looks around again. The Westwood, once familiar, now feels foreign, as if the trees themselves hold their breath, as if something unseen watches from every shadow. He considers insisting Tam check the trail thoroughly, but stops himself. There's no need, he says aloud, pulling his cloak tighter. Tam stops. No need? You're probably right, Rand answers. There's no point looking for what isn't there. Tam smiles faintly. I could do with a pipe and a mug of ale. Then, with a chuckle, he adds, and I expect you're eager to see Egwene. Rand's face reddens. Egwene, the mayor's daughter, has indeed been on his mind lately, though he doesn't want to admit it. He mumbles something vague and quickly changes the subject. Tam says gently, remember the flame, lad, and the void. Rand nods. It's a strange lesson Tam has always offered. Focus on a flame, feed all your fears into it, until only the void remains, a place of calm, empty clarity. Rand has never heard anyone else in the Two Rivers speak that way, but Tam believes in it, and in moments like this, Rand sees its value. They resume their walk. Tam clucks to Bella, and the mare moves forward once more. Tam strides along as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Rand tries to do the same, but the image of the black rider stays with him, and that deep, impossible feeling that it wasn't over. As the path leads them closer to Amon's field, signs of life begin to appear through the thinning trees. The familiar contours of the land become visible. Fences, smoke rising from chimneys, the slope of rooftops just ahead. Rand feels a flicker of comfort as the village comes into view, but the unease hasn't lifted. It lingers at the edge of his thoughts, whispering doubt. Small children begin to appear, darting between houses and fences. Dogs bark and chase each other, and children's laughter rings out, sounds that have been missing during the long, silent months of winter. Rand notices how even these small bursts of life feel fragile, like early buds daring to bloom before the final frost. Festival season has that effect, he thinks. Beltane was once just a festival for dancing, food, and contests. But this year, it carries the weight of hope. As they pass the first row of houses, Bella plods on patiently, ignoring the noisy swarms of children that weave under her nose, yelling and tumbling in their games. In recent weeks, the streets have been quiet. The wolves kept everyone indoors. Now with the festival near, even fear has retreated behind excitement. Windows have been thrown open bright linens, and bedding hang from sills. Good wives beat rugs in courtyards, and men climb rooftops to inspect the winter damage to their thatch. Rand can hear one woman singing as she scrubs the front step with a brush. It feels almost normal again. Tam pauses a few times to exchange greetings and brief news with fellow villagers. Men want to know how things are out near the Westwood, and Tam obliges, talking about the snowstorms, late lambs, ravens in strange numbers, and the brown, slow-growing fields. The news is grim, but no worse than what others are reporting. All across the Two Rivers, it seems the land has turned against them. Still, most men respond with a shrug. We'll survive, the light willing, one says. Another grins and adds, and if the light doesn't will, we'll survive anyway. Rand smiles faintly. That kind of grim humor defines the people here. They've weathered storms, wolves, hard soil, and bad years, and still they farm, raise children, and make do. But even with all that toughness, Rand senses a shift this year, like something has stretched too far and is about to snap. As they near the center of the village, they come upon Witcongar, a wiry man with a permanent scowl and a reputation for complaining. He steps into the road, arms crossed, forcing Tam to stop or run him over. "I have to get this to Bran al'Vere, Wit," Tam says evenly, gesturing toward the barrels in the cart. But Wit doesn't move. "What are we going to do about Nynaeve?" he demands, voice sharp. "We can't have a wisdom like that for Emond's Field." Tam sighs, clearly weary of this conversation before it begins. "That's not our place, Wit. The wisdom is women's business. She said we'd have a mild winter and a good harvest. Well, look around. Ask her what she hears on the wind now, and she just glares and stomps off. If you asked her the way you usually do," Tam replies calmly, "you're lucky she didn't thump you with that stick she carries." "I'm telling you, al'Thor," Wit pushes on. "She's too young. The village council has to do something." Before Tam can reply, a stern female voice cuts through the street. "What business of yours is the wisdom, Witcongar?" Wit flinches as Daze Congar appears behind him, arms crossed, her apron still tied and a bucket in one hand. Twice his size, with a stare that could snap wood, she walks forward slowly. "If you try meddling in women's circle business, you'll be making your own food and washing your own clothes, which you won't be doing under my roof." Wit stammers, "But Daze, I was just." Tam, taking the opportunity, gives a respectful nod. "If you'll pardon me, Daze, Wit, the light shine on you both." He clucks at Bella, and they move forward. Rand exhales a quiet breath. There was no end to Wit's grumbling, but Tam always found a way to keep peace, or sidestep it before things turned to open argument. As they go, Rand looks around warily. With so many good wives outside today, shaking linens and scrubbing porches, it's only a matter of time before Tam becomes the center of matchmaking schemes again. More than a few women have eyed him over the years, deciding he'd make a fine husband despite his farm's location out in the Westwood. Rand sometimes suffers similar treatment, cornered with pastries and questions, measured by curious eyes for his shoulders and potential income. He's been trapped by good wives on more than one occasion and force-fed honeycakes while enduring comments about widowed daughters or cousins in Watch Hill. "I'd rather face a bear," he mutters once under his breath. They hurry toward the green, the open heart of Emond's Field. This year, it's still more brown and patchy than lush and green, the grass stunted from the lingering cold. Still, the signs of preparation are unmistakable. Mounds of logs being arranged for the Beltane fires, children singing, and the spring pole being raised by a group of older women. The spring pole, a long, stripped fir trunk, is planted in a deep hole at the center of the green. Young girls, those not yet old enough to braid their hair, sit cross-legged nearby, watching enviously. Tomorrow, the women will pretend to be surprised at its appearance, and the unmarried girls will dance the ribbons while the unmarried boys sing. Rand tries not to stare, but he knows the traditions well. Beltane is one of the year's biggest events, filled with singing, dancing, contests, and feasting. There'll be archery and quarterstaff tournaments, sling competitions, riddles, sheep shearing, and even darts. And if rumor is true, this year may bring something special, fireworks. As they approach the Wendspring Inn, the largest building in the village, Rand's eyes are drawn to the gleaming red tile roof, the only one of its kind in Emond's Field. The first floor is stone, the second whitewashed wood that juts out slightly, casting a welcoming shadow over the entrance. Just outside, as if waiting for them, stands Bran al'Vere, the mayor, a round man with a cheerful face and a silver medallion of office resting over his spotless apron. He walks quickly despite his girth, waving as he approaches. "Tam," Bran calls, beaming. "The light shine on me. It's good to see you at last. And you too, Rand. How are you, my boy?" "Fine, Master al'Vere," Rand says, offering a polite nod. "I was starting to think you wouldn't bring your brandy this year," Bran says, half teasing, half accusing. Tam replies with a tired smile. Not with the wolves the way they are, or the snow. Rand snorts. You're not the first to say so. But the light helped me if one more person expects me to do something about the weather. Just then, a voice rasps from behind them. Sen Bulai, the village thatcher and town grumbler, arrives with his walking staff hunched and grim. An ill omen? Sen declares. No storks nesting on rooftops for Beltane. There's worse to come, you mark my words. Tam arches an eyebrow. Since when did you become a soothsayer, Sen? Or are you listening to the wind like the wisdom? Sen snorts. Laugh if you will. But if it doesn't warm soon, we'll all be gnawing on empty root cellars before harvest. Or worse, maybe it'll never warm. Maybe it'll be winter until the wheel turns again. That's madness. Bran snaps. Rand watches the exchange quietly. He sees the lines on his father's face as Tam shifts a barrel to the inn. Despite the jokes and good-natured jabs, the tension is real. Everyone is hoping for a good festival, but everyone feels that something darker is brewing beneath the surface. And behind them all, though no one dares to say it aloud, is the memory of a man in a black cloak watching from the woods. Rand was only half listening to the grown men argue about winter omens and storks when a sudden tug at his sleeve made him turn his head sharply. A whisper followed, pitched low and conspiratorial. "Come on, Rand," the voice said, while they're busy arguing, before someone thinks to hand you a broom. It was Matt Cawthon, crouched beside the cart like a coiled spring, grinning with that all-too-familiar glint of mischief in his eyes. His wiry frame was contorted awkwardly to avoid being seen by Tam or the others. "Matt," Rand said, surprised, "what are you?" "We caught a badger, a big one," Matt whispered. "Mean as a rabid dog. Dav and I are going to let it loose on the green. You should see how it growls. The girls will be screaming." Rand couldn't help it. He smiled. A year ago, that would have sounded like a grand plan. But today, things had changed. "I promised to unload the cider," Rand said reluctantly. "I'll meet you later." Matt rolled his eyes dramatically. "Toting barrels? Burn me, you sound like my father. All right, your loss." But then, as Matt straightened to go, Rand asked suddenly, "Did you see a man in a black cloak on the road?" Matt's smirk faded. He hesitated, then leaned closer. His voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. "You saw him too," Matt said, eyes wide. "I thought I was the only one." Rand's heart skipped. "When?" he asked quickly. 3 days ago," Matt replied. "Just outside the village. I was walking along the ridge and suddenly he was there, on the hill, just watching me. That cloak? It didn't move in the wind. I thought maybe it was the Dark One himself." Rand swallowed hard. "I felt like he was looking right into me, like he hated me." Matt nodded. "Me too." He just sat on his force, not moving. I looked away for a second, just a blink, really, and he was gone. Rand looked toward the trees behind the inn. Even in daylight, they seemed darker now. "It wasn't just imagination," he said. "He was real." "I told Dav and Elam, but they laughed," Matt said, frustrated. "Now Elam thinks I made it up. Dav says he's probably a sheep thief from Terran Ferry." "Not with a cloak like that," Rand muttered. "And not with the way he looked at us," Matt added. "He gave a little shiver, blood and ashes. I can't stop thinking about him. I keep looking over my shoulder." Rand nodded slowly. "We should tell someone." "We already did. Our fathers. They didn't believe us." Matt hesitated. "Think Master Alver would listen." "Not without proof," Rand said. "He'd probably send us to Nanib to check our heads for fever." Matt laughed weakly. "She'd probably hit us with her stick first." Rand looked back toward the cart. Tam was now deep in conversation with Bran and Sen, all of them gesturing emphatically about the weather or politics or something else that didn't involve dark riders with hateful eyes. "So what do we do?" Matt asked. Rand didn't have an answer. "I don't know, but I think we need to be careful." Just then, Tam's voice rose cheerfully above the noise. "Ah, Matrim," he said, spotting them. "I see you've come to help unload the cart. Good lad." Matt jumped backward as if stung. "Ah, good morning, Master Althor, Master Alver, Master Bui," he said quickly. "I was just Might have sent me tow." "I'm sure he did," Tam said, clearly unconvinced, but too amused to press further. "And no doubt you've already finished your task, being such a dutiful son." Rand bit his tongue to avoid laughing. "The quicker the ciders in the cellar," Tam continued, "the quicker you lads can see the Gleeman." Matt's head snapped around. "Gleeman?" he said. "There's a Gleeman?" Rand blinked. "When did he get here?" Tam leaned against the cart, resting an arm on a brandy cask. "Last night. Arrived in the dead of night, pounding on the inn door." Bran chuckled. "Woke up the whole household. If it weren't for Beltane, I might make him sleep with his horse." "A real Gleeman?" Matt repeated, his excitement building. "Colorful patchwork cloak and all," Rand confirmed. "You'll get to see him tonight." Rand felt a sudden lightness rise in his chest. A Gleeman. The last time one had visited was years ago. His stories and songs had been the talk of the village for months afterward. For a moment, the memory of the rider in black faded slightly in the glow of anticipation. But Senbui, never one to let good cheer go unspoiled, grumbled loudly. "A foolish waste of money, if you ask me. That and those fireworks." "So there really are fireworks?" Matt asked, wide-eyed. "Or there would be," Sen snapped. "If the peddler arrives, if he even has them, if he ever shows." "He's just late," Bran said, shooting a look at Sen. "And even if he doesn't come, the Gleeman is worth it." Rand laughed, the sound bursting out of him before he could stop it. "A black-cloaked Gleeman," he said aloud, still half nervous from the earlier conversation. "Hardly," Bran said, still smiling. "His cloak is nothing but color. Patches and patterns in every shade you can think of." Even Tam laughed. "It seems we could all use a good story." Sen, still muttering about waste and nonsense, excused himself with a grumble and shuffled toward the inn for some mulled wine. As the men dispersed, Tam lifted another cask. "Time to finish the work, lad," he said to Rand. "Then you can chase Gleeman and fireworks all you like." Matt grabbed a barrel as well, grinning. "I'll help, but only because I want a good spot for the Gleeman's first tail." Rand, now hoisting a heavy cask himself, shook his head. "You just want to make sure Egwene sees you being useful." Matt gave him a sideways look. "That, and watching you drool over her, is almost as good as a badger in a sack." Rand blushed but said nothing. Egwene was, indeed, likely nearby, maybe inside the inn already, but whether he was ready to face her was another matter entirely. As the boys carried the cider toward the cellar entrance, laughter and the promise of celebration drifted through the air. The first signs of Beltane's joy had begun to take root in Amon's field, even as shadows watched from the woods. Rand paused for a moment before setting the barrel down. The cellar door stood open, and the shadows inside were deep and cool. A scent of damp earth and old wood rose up as Matt disappeared below, grumbling softly about bruising his arms on the barrels. Rand adjusted his grip and followed. The cellar of the Wine Spring Inn was well kept, its walls lined with shelves of cheese wheels, smoked meats, root vegetables, and older barrels from previous years. As they stacked the new barrels in place, the sounds of footsteps and conversation echoed faintly from above. The inn was already bustling, with more activity than it had seen in weeks. Once they'd finished, Rand emerged back into the afternoon light. The village green now held twice as many people as it had an hour ago. More children ran across the grass, laughing and shrieking. The spring pole had been fully erected, its ribbons not yet tied, but blowing gently in the wind. Older women continued their singing and preparations, while fathers and sons stacked the final logs for the bonfires. Rand spotted Tam near the inn's entrance, sharing a quiet word with Bran Alver. From the look on Tam's face, calm, thoughtful, he was already preparing to shift into his festival role. Neighbor, storyteller, maybe even competitor in the archery contest tomorrow. Tam had always won, every year without fail, and this year, for the first time, Rand believed he might just place if he could hold onto the void. Tam had taught him to still his mind, to let go of fear and doubt, and let the arrow fly as if it chose the target itself. Flame and void, lad, Tam always said. Let them burn away the rest. Rand turned from the inn and walked across the green. The houses surrounding it, half-timbered and thatched, all bore signs of spring cleaning, laundry flapping, curtains fluttering, carpets airing. Even if the land hadn't fully warmed, the people were trying to will spring into being by sheer effort. As he passed, Ewan Fingar, one of the younger village boys, came tearing by with a whooping stick, his little legs pumping hard. He shouted, "The Gleeman's here! He's really here!" to no one in particular, then disappeared around a corner. Other children took up the cry, "Gleeman! Gleeman!" Rand smiled, remembering when he'd been that age, the first time he saw a traveling man in a patch-covered cloak, telling tales of Manetheren, Archer Hawkwing, and Luz Theron. That Gleeman had played a flute and juggled flaming sticks, and Rand had never been so awed in his life. Now, years later, it felt just as exciting, and it couldn't come at a better time. Everyone needed something to pull them back into wonder, away from wolves and snow and shadows in the trees. He glanced toward the mountains of mist, visible now behind the rooftops of Amon's field, looming like silent stone guardians. They felt closer than ever today, not in distance, but in presence. Something stirred behind those peaks. Rand could feel it. Behind him, Matt came up alongside, rubbing his shoulder. "That last barrel was heavier than it looked," he grumbled. "I think Bran filled it with rocks." Rand grinned. "Maybe he heard about your badger plan and decided to weigh you down." Matt smirked. "Still might go through with it. Depends how many cakes I can charm out of the kitchens first." They both fell silent for a moment, watching the festival take shape. Around them, neighbors called out greetings, shared news, and laughed with relief. Relief that life could still feel normal, even if only for a day. But Rand's eyes drifted to the edge of the village, to the line of trees beyond which the Westwood waited, dark and tangled. Somewhere out there, a rider in black had stood. Maybe he still stood. Maybe he watched even now. "Do you think he's gone?" Rand asked quietly. Matt's answer came after a pause. "I don't know, but I don't think he's done." Rand looked back toward the inn. The voices of the older men were still drifting through the open windows. Talk of crop yields, whether the wisdom, and who would win the sheep shearing contest. In the kitchen, he could hear Egwene's voice, cheerful and clear, as she helped her mother prepare for guests. He wanted to feel safe again, to believe that the only thing waiting tomorrow was music and dancing. But something had cracked open, and whatever was behind it was watching. He took a deep breath and tried to summon the void. "Flame and void," he whispered under his breath. Just for a moment, the thoughts quieted.